I think it's really interesting that when everything's going on in the world, there our government's trying to shut down freedom of speech with one certain kind of app. But it's really interesting when the government wants to do that and take our rights away as Americans. And I think it's kind of really interesting that our government is so scared that we have so much control and so much power as the collective. And we're rising up and we're speaking our truth. And there's no more control. So they're trying to use drastic measures to make people scared. And I think it's really petty because they're going to ban this app. And if they get away with it, whoopie doo. We'll all move somewhere else, or we'll create another dynamic. And I think it's really interesting that the government is trying to control, and that's what they do. But at the end of the day, if you look at the whole like big picture of why things play out the way they do, it's not that scary because you know that in your divine connection or your divine power, your divine, whatever, however you want to phrase it, you know there's nothing you need to be afraid of because everything that you desire will play out. Everything that you desire will work because you decided it, you orchestrated it, you're going to work it all out in the way it needs to be. And then you're going to realize later how much time it is. It really doesn't matter how much time it is when you realize that I've been working towards this like my whole life. But I didn't see that at the time because I was subtracted or distracted or on a different wave. And now I'm like stepping up, stepping out, stepping into this whole new like dynamic of what I'm supposed to do. And then it's like so obvious. And it's kind of like mind blowing because you know that what you're supposed to do in your life, you know how you're going to achieve what you're going to achieve because it's literally getting paved out in front of you. So, whatever the paving material is, it's literally getting paved out in front of you. And you just have to trust the process. And you're not seeing the process in the 3D, but you can feel it getting laid out in the 5D, and you see it and you feel it, and all this stuff's happening. And then you're like, this is not that bad. Like, I feel like awkward. I feel uncomfortable. I feel like I got chills. I feel like I have all this stuff going on in me. And I'm just acclimating or spreading my wings, stretching my wings out to my new environment. And when you realize that this is what's going on and you're not in the physical realm anymore, you're in a spiritual realm. It's just you're not seeing it with your naked eye yet because it takes time to play it all out or to get to the next scene, or the universe is structuring it all out that it's literally like a town getting built and you're not seeing every little thing because you can't see every little corner and crevice and area because you're only seeing a perception of it, but you know a city is getting built because you can feel it. You have growing pains, you have stretch marks, you have all these things that are showing you that something is different. But if you don't see it, it does not mean it doesn't exist because that's an illusion. you know it's getting to play out, and you're going to get that what you need. It's going to fall into place. You're going to get it. Everything's going to be laid out, like structure mind, like this is what you're supposed to do. A B C D E F G, like you're going to know letter by letter what to do, and it's just going to flow. Like you're just going to get blown away by how it's supposed to flow, and you're going to be like, holy fucking shit. Like my emotions are like in different spots, different dwellings, different, like this feels so awkward. It feels so uncomfortable. I got chills. I'm cold. I have all these so many different emotions going on. I feel hunger. I feel discomfort. And then you're going to like spread your wings and you're going to fly. And the first flight is going to be really, really, really awkward because you're probably going to fall down, scrape your face on the asphalt. It's going to hurt. You're going to be bleeding. You're going to be bruised. And then you do it a couple more times. And you're like, this is not that like precarious. Like, this feels weird. My face is bleeding. I'm scratched up. My wing's a little bent. It's not broken. It's bent because I fell. And then you get back up and you shake the dust off and you're like, that was really, that felt weird. That felt uncomfortable. And then when you wings get stronger and you get more like agile or more developed in that, this is what they feel like and this is how I can like strengthen them. And then you take flight again, and yeah, you fly a little farther and then you fall down and you and you're like, I got farther than I did last time. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm farther than I was yesterday. And then I'm farther than I was last week. And then I'm farther than I was last month. And I'm farther than I was last year. So when you just look at things through like a different perspective of flight, is really difficult if you've never done it before. But after you figure out the construct of why it works the way it does, you fly and you're like that was easy. But then when you get up to it and you get up to the takeoff and the landing and all that stuff, you're like, this is so weird. Like, I've never experienced this before. And you get into like the dynamic of your first flight, you spread your wings and you go, and then yeah, something happens. You have an engine failure. You have your landing gear gets stuck. Like, you have these like scenarios where you're like, what do I do? And then you figure it out, and you figure it out, and then you figure it out, and you're like, this is a piece of cake. Because it was like that the first time you got your license. You're driving down the road. You're like, I'm so scared this guy next to me is gonna hit me. And then you kept driving and you kept driving and you get used to it. And then the people next to you, like, you're just like coherent to what's going on. Like, they hit you and you just keep driving. You're not even phased by it. It's the same thing. Like, you learn experiences and you're like, okay, this is a new experience. This is so awkward, so precarious. I feel so uncomfortable. But then you realize that this is just a season that I have to go through. And you're like, this is not that difficult. This is not that difficult because I know that I'm a whole different person because of what's going on. Because every time I go to sleep and I wake up, I have a different experience. I have a different, like, awakening moment. I have a different awareness of what's going on. And yes, there's things that I'm irritated in, but that's because I'm shedding those old feathers, or I'm shedding those old wings, or I'm shedding that old skin, however you want to use the analogy. And that's why it feels weird every time, because you're like, okay, this skin's coming off. I'm growing a new skin. It feels different. I feel different because of what's going on. And you keep seeing these little like aha moment experiences of this is what's going on, and it blows my mind because I know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it feels so uncomfortable, like to the point where I'm like like agitated. Like I'm agitated because of everything that's going on, because all I want is something simple. But I can't comprehend that, and that's all a perception. So it's not true. And you divide that out and be like, okay, this is what's going on. It's never going to be the same. It's going to be different because I know when I get to my goal, I'm going to have a different idea, and I'm going to have a different outcome because I know that I'm going to get where I want to be because of what I've experienced. And I've experienced this before, but it didn't feel like this. So when you realize that this is what's going on, and I'm not a big fan of what's going on because of the experiences that I have, and it's very awkward, it's very uncomfortable. When you accept that and you sit in that, then you're not really worried about anything because you know at the end of the day, things that used to bother you that don't really bother you anymore, you're you're like you're like expecting that to happen the way that it's supposed to. Like you're like, what's gonna happen next? Like you're already like 10 steps ahead of what you're supposed to do. And you're like, okay, this feels awkward. This feels precarious. Like, this feels this way, but I know that it's not always gonna be like this because something's different. Something is gonna play out differently than what I feel or what I think. And then you trust the process of this is what's going on. This is how I'm going to get there. And then you're like, okay, this is super uncomfortable. This is super awkward. Super awkward. But then you realize it's just an experience. And then when you get through that experience, you're like, okay, I'm going to get another experience. And you start looking at things like chapter books. Like you look at what chapter you're on, whatever chapter that is. If you're on chapter 7 or you're on chapter 49, you know that you're going to get to 50. You're not going to go back to 47 or 48. You're going to move forward. So same thing if you're on chapter 7, you're not going to go back to chapter 6. You're going to move to chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 10. And it doesn't matter which chapter you're in. If you're on chapter 55, the whole construct of it is you're going to get to the end of the book, whatever, how long it takes you. So if it takes you 10 years or it takes you 5 minutes, you'll get through that book and you'll be like, okay, I got this. I got this. Like, I'm not worried about anything because I know at the end of the day, I'm going to be where I'm supposed to be. Like, things start to play out the way that they need to play out. And then you're like, okay, this is what's going on. Yes, it's super awkward. It's super uncomfortable. But then you realize that this is what's going on and you're not really worried about it because you know at the end of the day, you're doing what you need to do. And then you're not really worried about how long it took you, how many decades it took you or how many lifetimes it took you, because you know that time is relevant in certain situations, but in other situations it's not relevant. Like when you can realize the construct of how things get created and how you want something a certain way, and it's not it's not flowing the way that you want it to right away because you're stuck in this old routine of this is what I want, but I'm not there yet because it's a whole process how to get there. And then you learn from the situation that you're in. If I just trust, and yeah, some things don't make sense, but if I trust and I wake up every day and I learn something, even if it's subconscious, learning something and realizing that I want the things that I want so bad, like that's not even the right word to use. But when you know that you know that you know, which sounds so like predictable, you're not really worried about things. When you break it down what you're supposed to do and you come to terms with this is what's going on and this is why it's going on and this is the reason that it's going on, you don't really stand in, you don't really stand in worry, because you know that the reason that you stand in fear, the reason you used to stand in worry is because you were untrusting of the experience. So you get hesitant because you don't know what the outcome is, but whatever the outcome is, it's going to be for your highest timeline. So it really doesn't matter how you get there. Honestly, it doesn't really matter how you get there. I guess the microwave just shut the power off. It doesn't matter how you get there because you know that you're going to get what you need to get.